Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything, by B.J. Fogg, Ph.D. Picture Linda, sitting on the edge of her bed in the middle of a personal hurricane. This wasn't some metaphorical storm. This was real life tearing her world apart, piece by piece. First, her son died from an overdose. Then her daughter received a bipolar diagnosis. The family business collapsing. And just when she thought things couldn't get worse, she discovered her husband had early-onset Alzheimer's. His clouded judgment had led to disastrous business decisions, and now bankruptcy loomed over everything. Everything vanished. Their savings, their home, even the horse ranch that represented Linda's lifelong dream. Grief consumed her, but there was no time to process it. Each morning became an excruciating battle just to plant her feet on the floor. Hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Then, something tiny entered her life. Something deceptively simple. A behavior she credits with literally saving her existence. Every single morning, after waking up, she'd put her feet on the floor and speak 7 words aloud. It's going to be a great day. That's the whole thing. 3 seconds of her day. But for Linda, those 3 seconds became a fulcrum, a tiny seed of light planted in the broken fragments of her world. And slowly, miraculously, it started growing. Here's a radical thought. What if everything you've been told about change is backwards? What if losing weight, building that business, writing your book, or finding peace has nothing to do with massive willpower or motivational speeches? What if the secret lives in something so absurdly small that it almost feels like cheating? By the time we finish this journey together, you'll understand a science-backed system that makes change feel natural, even enjoyable. You'll learn how to plant your own tiny seeds and watch them transform into a life that once seemed impossible. This is what Dr. B.J. Fogg promises in his groundbreaking book. For over 20 years at Stanford University, Fogg has been cracking the code of human behavior, personally coaching more than 40,000 people through his behavior design lab. His discovery? We've been doing change completely wrong this whole time, and here's the kicker. It's not your fault. So let's dive in and explore how the smallest changes can reshape everything. There's this story we've all been force-fed our entire lives about how change works. It's all about grinding it out, white-knuckling through challenges, and summoning superhuman discipline. Want to transform your body, your productivity, your entire existence? Just need more willpower, right? Get motivated. And when you inevitably crash and burn, which most of us do, the story tells you there's something fundamentally broken inside you. You weren't tough enough. You lacked character. Shame should be your companion. Dr. B.J. Fogg is here to burn that story to the ground. He's arguing that this whole approach represents a design flaw in the system, not a personal flaw in you. The problem isn't who you are, it's the method you've been handed. We've all been trying to build something beautiful with instructions written in a foreign language, and half the pieces missing, then beating ourselves up when everything falls apart. Here's the truth bomb. Motivation is the flakiest friend you'll ever have. Think of motivation as that buddy who's amazing at parties, but you'd never trust to help you move. Sure, they're there for the fun stuff, but when you really need them, gone. Motivation arrives in waves. You might feel unstoppable on New Year's Day, ready to overhaul everything. But by mid-January, that wave has crashed spectacularly, leaving you stranded right back where you started. Fogg calls this the motivation wave, and building your life around it is setting yourself up for heartbreak. So if motivation is unreliable, what actually works? In 2007, after a decade of research, Fogg had his breakthrough moment. He discovered the universal formula that explains all human behavior, from checking Instagram to running marathons. It's elegantly simple. Behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt. Behavior happens when three elements collide at the exact same moment. Motivation, your desire to do something; ability, how easy or difficult the action is; and a prompt, the trigger that tells you do this now. If even one of these three is missing, the behavior simply won't happen. It's that straightforward. Fogg shares a perfect example from his own life. He was grinding away at the gym when his phone buzzed with a text from the Red Cross, asking for earthquake relief donations for Haiti. Let's break this down through his formula. His motivation: sky high. He genuinely wanted to help. His ability: maxed out. Replying to a text is ridiculously easy. And the text itself? That was the prompt. Because all three elements converged perfectly, he donated right there on the elliptical machine. But imagine if the Red Cross had called instead, asking for his credit card details. His wallet was locked in his car. Suddenly his ability drops to near zero, and the donation probably doesn't happen. Or what if they'd mailed a letter that looked like junk mail? No prompt equals no behavior, even with high motivation and ability. This model changes everything. It reveals that we don't have to chase the unreliable dragon of motivation. We've got two other powerful levers at our disposal. We can adjust the prompt, and critically, we can dramatically adjust the ability. This brings us to the beating heart of the Tiny Habits philosophy. The single most transformative way to change your behavior is making it ridiculously simple. Fogg's core principle is beautifully straightforward. Simplicity changes behavior. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to pump up motivation, which feels like constantly inflating a leaky tire, the real secret is making the behavior so absurdly easy that you barely need any motivation at all. This completely flips the script on how most of us operate. We love going big. We commit to 30-minute meditation sessions, hour-long workouts, or writing 1,000 words daily. But when our motivation inevitably takes a nosedive, and trust me, it always does, these massive commitments feel like scaling Everest in flip-flops. So we quit, and add another failure to our collection. Fogg's personal journey with this idea is both humbling and illuminating. Here's this brilliant behavior scientist who spent years unable to establish a simple flossing habit. He'd leave the dentist's office feeling motivated, but it never lasted. One day, sitting in that dental chair again, he asked himself the breakthrough question: how can I make this behavior easier to do? His answer was so small, it bordered on ridiculous. He decided to floss just one tooth. Seriously, one single tooth. After brushing, he'd commit to flossing exactly one tooth. It was so tiny that saying no felt impossible. It required virtually no time, no real effort. His ability was through the roof. For the first few days, that's all he did. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you've got the floss in your hand and you've done one tooth, doing another becomes pretty natural. And another. He made himself a promise. Anything beyond one tooth was just bonus points. Within about 2 weeks, he was flossing his entire mouth twice daily, a habit that's stuck with him ever since. This story reveals the two pathways to making any habit tiny. The first is what Fogg did: scaling back. You take your desired habit, like flossing completely, and shrink it down to its most microscopic version. Want to meditate for 20 minutes? Your tiny habit becomes 3 conscious breaths. Want to crank out 50 push-ups? Start with 2 push-ups against the wall. The second method is the starter step. Here, your tiny habit is just the very first action in a larger sequence. If your goal is walking 3 miles daily, your starter step is simply putting on your walking shoes. That's the whole commitment. You don't have to actually walk. Just get those shoes on your feet. But once they're on, something shifts in your brain, the barrier dissolves. Most days, you'll find yourself heading out the door naturally. This approach is psychological jujitsu. It sidesteps resistance entirely. By keeping the bar so low it's practically on the ground. You ensure you're always capable of doing the habit, regardless of how exhausted, overwhelmed, or unmotivated you feel. By keeping that bar low, you keep the habit breathing. So we've got our tiny behavior defined. But when exactly do we do it? This brings us to the prompt in our formula, the catalyst that makes everything happen. Fogg realized that the most powerful prompts aren't alarms, sticky notes plastered everywhere, or phone notifications buzzing constantly. Those are what he calls context prompts, and our modern lives are already drowning in them. We've become so desensitized that our brains automatically tune them out, like background noise in a coffee shop. The real magic lives in what he calls an action prompt, later refined to something more memorable, an anchor. An anchor is an existing, rock-solid routine already embedded in your life that you can attach your new tiny habit to. The magic word here is after. You don't randomly decide to do 2 push-ups whenever. You create a specific recipe. After I flush the toilet, I will do 2 push-ups. Flushing the toilet is your anchor. It's a behavior already firmly rooted in your daily routine. The new tiny habit, those push-ups, is now anchored securely to it. This is the anatomy of a tiny habit. After I anchor, I will do my tiny behavior. Examples are everywhere once you start looking. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll open my journal. After my head hits the pillow, I'll think of one thing I'm grateful for. After I walk in the door from work, I'll hang up my keys immediately. The crucial part is finding a strong anchor. It needs to match your new habit in 3 dimensions. Location, they happen in the same physical space. Frequency, they occur at the same rate. And theme, they feel naturally connected. You wouldn't anchor sweeping the garage to brushing your teeth. The location and theme are completely mismatched. But anchoring flossing one tooth to brushing my teeth is a perfect marriage. So now we've got the anchor and the tiny behavior. We've constructed a complete recipe for action. But there's one final ingredient, and according to Fogg, it's the most critical skill of all. It's the secret sauce that makes habits form at warp speed. It's called celebration. Fogg's research led him to a revolutionary conclusion. Emotions create habits, not repetition, not frequency. It's the feeling you experience immediately after performing a behavior that wires it into your neural pathways. When you perform a behavior and instantly feel a positive emotion, your brain releases dopamine. This dopamine rush sends a clear message to your brain, hey, that was good stuff. Remember exactly what you just did and do it again. This neurochemical process encodes the behavior, making it increasingly automatic with each repetition. This explains why some habits form instantly. The first time a teenager gets a text from their crush, the immediate positive feeling wires in the phone-checking habit permanently. No need for 21 days of repetition or any of that nonsense. The beautiful news is we can hack this system intentionally. We can deliberately create a positive feeling on demand, immediately after our tiny habit, to accelerate the wiring process. This is what Fogg calls celebration. His personal discovery of this came during an intense period of darkness. A business venture was failing spectacularly, and his young nephew had died tragically. Anxiety consumed him, sleep became impossible, and looking in the mirror each morning filled him with dread. One day, after another brutal night, he performed his tiny habit of flossing one tooth. In that moment of despair, he looked at his reflection, managed a small smile, and said one word out loud, "Victory." And then he felt it. This warm space opened up in his chest, a tiny spark of success in an ocean of failure. He felt genuinely good. And that good feeling was so powerful, so unexpected, that he wanted to feel it again. A celebration isn't a reward you give yourself later, like treating yourself to a massage at week's end. That's an incentive, and it's too disconnected from the behavior to influence habit formation. A celebration must be immediate, happening during or milliseconds after the behavior, and it must be intense enough to register as genuine. It doesn't require a loud victory shout. It can be a simple fist pump, a quiet "awesome" in your head, a little shoulder shimmy, or just a genuine smile. The only requirement is that it makes you feel successful. Fogg even coined a specific word for this feeling of success: shine. When you perform your tiny habit recipe, anchor, then behavior, and immediately celebrate, you create shine. That feeling of shine is what signals your brain to encode the habit permanently. This leads to Fogg's second great principle: help people feel successful. When you weave all these pieces together, the tiny behavior, the anchor, and the celebration, something almost magical starts happening. Your habits begin to grow organically. This growth happens in two beautiful ways. Some habits grow bigger naturally. Your 2 push-ups evolve into 3, then 5, then 10. Your 3 breaths of meditation expand to a minute, then 5 minutes. You do more when you want to do more, not because you're forcing yourself. Other habits multiply like wildflowers. Your morning habit of saying "it's going to be a great day" creates positive momentum that inspires you to make your bed, which then inspires you to tidy the kitchen before leaving. Like dandelion seeds catching the wind, one good habit plants others throughout your entire day. This is how tiny becomes transformative. It's not just about the individual habits themselves. It's about the identity that emerges from the process. When you start succeeding, even in microscopic ways, your brain begins releasing old negative stories about who you are. You stop thinking, "I'm the kind of person who can't stick to exercise." After a week of doing 2 push-ups daily and celebrating each time, you start thinking, "Hey, I'm actually the kind of person who exercises every single day." This identity shift is the ultimate change amplifier. You begin acting in ways consistent with your new identity, and entire galaxies of new positive behaviors fall into place naturally, almost effortlessly. This same system works brilliantly for untangling habits you want to eliminate. Fogg advises against the concept of breaking a bad habit, which implies one forceful action. Instead, he compares it to untangling a knotted rope. You don't yank the whole thing violently. You find one small, accessible knot and gently work it loose. You do this by using the formula in reverse. To stop a behavior, you can remove the prompt, make it harder to do by decreasing ability, or reduce the motivation. The most effective starting point is usually removing the prompt. To stop mindlessly scrolling on your phone in bed, don't keep your phone by your bed. Charge it in the kitchen overnight. You've removed the prompt and simultaneously made the behavior harder to execute. This entire framework isn't just for individual transformation. It's about how we change together, how we help the people we love change too. Mike, a successful executive, was at his breaking point with his 21-year-old son, Chris, who was living at home and struggling with basic responsibilities. One daily source of friction was their fancy coffee maker. Chris would use it but never clean the filter, leaving a disgusting mess for Mike to discover every morning. Nagging didn't work. Threatening didn't work. Nothing worked. After learning behavior design, Mike tried a completely different approach. He stopped nagging entirely and instead made the behavior tiny. He asked Chris casually, "Hey, next time you use the coffee maker, could you just take the filter out and put it on the counter?" "That's all. Just take it out," Chris agreed easily. The next morning, the filter was sitting on the counter. Instead of criticizing what wasn't done, Mike celebrated his son's success. "Hey, Chris, thanks for putting the filter on the counter. That actually means a lot to me." Chris kept doing it. After a couple of weeks, Mike asked him to rinse it first. Soon, Chris was removing, rinsing, and replacing the filter without being asked at all. That tiny success with a coffee filter changed everything between them. It replaced a destructive cycle of resentment with a constructive cycle of success and appreciation. Mike and his wife started applying this make it tiny approach to everything, and their entire relationship with their son began healing. They were finally changing together, not against each other. When you step back and look at the full scope of what Tiny Habits represents, you realize it transcends being just another productivity or self-improvement book. It's actually a quiet revolution against our culture of hustle and shame. It's a system built on a foundation of deep compassion for what it means to be human. The most profound and lasting lesson from Dr. Fogg's work is this single, powerful truth. You change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. For generations, we've been taught that change requires self-punishment. We've been trained to beat ourselves up when we fail, believing shame is somehow motivating. But Fogg's research proves the exact opposite. Negative emotions might spark a short-term action out of desperation, but they shrink the roots of our habits. They make us want to avoid the behavior altogether. It's the positive emotions, that feeling of success, of shine, that fertilizes the soil and allows new habits to grow deep and strong. This is why celebration is so revolutionary. It's not some cute psychological trick. It's direct application of neuroscience. It reframes change from a chore you must endure into a game you get to win. Over and over again, every single day. The feeling of success becomes the engine driving your transformation forward. The other stroke of brilliance in this book is the relentless focus on ability over motivation. The go big or go home mythology has caused so much unnecessary suffering and failure. By making behaviors tiny, Fogg gives us a way to design for our worst days, not just our best ones. A tiny habit is something you can execute even when you're sick, exhausted, and completely unmotivated. And by doing it, you keep the flame alive. You maintain consistency, which is the true foundation of any long-term change. So how can you actually put this into practice today? Not tomorrow when you're feeling more motivated, not next week when things calm down. Right now, in this moment. Let me leave you with 3 tiny habits you can start immediately. First, the Maui habit. Fogg suggests this as the perfect starting point for anyone. The recipe is beautifully simple. After I put my feet on the floor in the morning, I will say, "It's going to be a great day." Try to genuinely feel a sense of optimism as you say it. It takes 3 seconds total, and it sets a positive trajectory for your entire day. Second, the classic flossing habit. After I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. Then immediately celebrate. Give yourself a mental high five. Smile at your reflection. Feel that tiny rush of success washing over you. Watch how quickly 1 tooth naturally evolves into all of them. And third, try a celebration blitz. If you're feeling overwhelmed or just need a quick win, do this right now. Find the messiest corner of your room, set a timer for exactly 3 minutes, and start tidying. After every single item you put away, every piece of paper you throw out, every book you return to the shelf, celebrate. It can be a tiny yes, or a fist pump. When that timer sounds, stop and notice how you feel. I guarantee you'll feel a genuine sense of accomplishment, a feeling of shine spreading through you. In the end, Tiny Habits teaches us that transformation doesn't arrive from a lightning bolt of inspiration or some heroic act of superhuman willpower. It comes from the quiet, consistent accumulation of tiny victories. It's about learning to become your own best coach instead of your own harshest critic. It's about discovering that the path to becoming who you want to be is paved not with struggle and suffering, but with success and celebration. That was a summary of Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. We've explored the most important ideas today, but I need to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful city. It shows you the layout, the major landmarks, the general direction, but it can't give you the feeling of actually walking those streets, hearing the sounds echoing off the buildings, or smelling the food wafting from the restaurants. The real magic of this book lives in the stories, the detailed examples, and the way Fogg's gentle, encouraging voice guides you through the process like a trusted friend. This summary is your map. If anything we've discussed has sparked your curiosity, or given you even a glimmer of hope that change might be possible, I encourage you to visit the city for yourself. Grab a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just about learning a method, it's about experiencing a fundamental shift in how you see yourself and your potential for change. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by liking this summary and subscribing to the channel. It's a small action, but it helps us continue bringing you the best ideas from the world's most transformative books. Let's keep learning and growing together.